Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. Marching through the book, we come to Daniel in the Lion's Den. This is a very popular story in children's Bibles, and I think everyone I've ever seen makes me nuts because none of them do this story justice. For starters, let's look at who Daniel is. In this story, he's a very old man. He's been serving in the court of foreign kings. It started out with Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, but he's gone through 10 different kings by this point in time, and he's still there. That is a monumental thing because the standard practice when a new king takes over is to kill off all the people that were loyal to that king. But Daniel keeps sticking around because he's so respected for his wisdom and his integrity. Everybody knows that Daniel is the go-to guy. But also, let's not overlook, Daniel is old. He's easily in his 90s when the newest king takes over. This is Darius of the Medes. And as he's setting up his government, Daniel 6:3 tells us, Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officials. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Some of those other administrators and officials that Daniel was outshining take it personally, they don't like it, and so they want to knock Daniel out of the way. They try to run a smear campaign against him. But verse 4 says he was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance for finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So they think they've found a weakness. They go to Darius and convince him, hey, you're so amazing that you should make a law that no one can pray to any god or any person or anything other than you for a whole month. We're going to call it Darius month. It's going to be awesome. And somehow Darius falls for this, even though if you take 2 seconds to think about it, that sounds awful. No one's allowed to ask anyone for anything except me. I don't know if you've ever had toddlers. That gets old real quick. But Darius falls for it. He signs it into law. And we see in verse 10, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. This is the man who has been above reproach, perfectly trustworthy, famous for his integrity throughout 10 different dynasties. But when he hears about this law, he doesn't even flinch about breaking it. Why? Because this is what he has always done. This is his practice. That verse showed us multiple times. This was his normal practice. This is what he does. He prays to his God 3 times a day. That's why his opponents came up with this whole thing to try to make it illegal, because they knew that's what he does. And I love that he does it with the windows open. He's not trying to hide anything. Daniel is well aware that his source of strength and wisdom and everything that has carried him through this long tenure is his relationship with his God. And he's not about to let some weird log stand in the way of that. Sure enough, the opponents spot him and they run and tattle to the king and say, oh, Daniel was praying. You gotta throw him to the lions now. We see in verse 14, hearing this, the king was deeply troubled and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. That's interesting to me because we don't see anything of Daniel being worried about it, but the king is freaking out. And he's so upset, he's like, oh no, what have I done? I'm gonna lose my best guy because of this. But in the end, he can't find any sort of loophole. They have to carry out the sentence. Daniel is sealed into the lion's den. The king spends a restless night. He can't sleep. We don't get a peep of what it was like for Daniel. We don't know if he slept or not. We know what the king went through that night. First thing in the morning, he runs out to the cave. Verse 20 says, when he got there, he cried out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve so faithfully able to rescue you from the lions? This line is important for a couple reasons. First of all, 2 different times he points out Daniel's relationship to his God. Everybody knew that was Daniel's core identity. The opponents tried to use it against him. Darius recognized it as his source of strength, but he wondered if it was enough. He had that line, was your God able to rescue you? And I just imagine God listening to this going, excuse me, was I able? And can I handle a lion? And Daniel answered, long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so they would not hurt me. A couple verses later it says, not a scratch was found on him, for he trusted in his God. And that's all the story we get from Daniel's perspective. An angel shut the lions' mouths. What did that look like? Were there lions attacking him all night and an angel fighting them off? Or did lions attack once and an angel smacked them so hard that they hid in the corner the rest of the night? Or did these lions turn into big cuddly kittens? That's how the children's Bibles always portray it. I don't know, because Daniel doesn't tell us. Because just like last week's story with the fiery furnace, that wasn't about the guys who went through it, but we saw Nebuchadnezzar's perspective. This is the same thing. It's not really about Daniel and what he went through. It's about the impact it had on the king. In verse 26, he says, I decreed that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. Those are big words for a king to use, because he's so aware that he just took over the last guy's kingdom, and he knows that sooner or later someone's going to take over from him. But he has had an object lesson that this God is not to be messed with. He is more powerful than any of it. He's not explicitly commanding everyone to worship God, and the text never really tells us whether or not he does. But what we can learn from Daniel is that God is willing and able to save anyone who calls on him. Daniel trusted him, and even when things went south, even when he did get sealed in with the lions, he still trusted God, and God saved him. Just like last week with the furnace, this doesn't show that God will protect you from having to go into the terrible thing, but he's there with you, and he can carry you through it. God is still willing to rescue anyone who calls on him. He did it for Daniel, and he'll do it for you too.